Morning as we go to the Chitas of today. We're holding in the portion of Beshalach. And this is what we're going to read today is Parshas Haman, which there are some great sages who say that we should say this Parsha every day because the man that came down from heaven, is symbolic to the Parnasa that God gives to everybody. Like a gift from heaven, talent, his capabilities. They makes a Baruch Hashem a living in this world. God spoke to Moshe Lamer saying, Shamati Estunas Bnei Yisrael, I heard the complaints of the Jewish nation. And speak to them, Lamer saying, in Abarim Techul Basar, in the afternoon you'll eat flesh. And in the morning you will eat bread. You'll know that I'm the Lord your God. It was the evening of Atal, and the evening came, and the quail came upon the and it covered over the entire camp. And then the morning came, and there was a layer of dew around the camp. Rashi says a shlav is a specific kind of bird, and it's extremely fat. The dew lay on the man, but also it's written when the dew descended in the camp at night, the man would descend upon it. The nation of the matter is as follows: the dew would descend on the earth, then the man would descend upon it, and then more dew would descend upon the man. The man was stored in a box, so to say. It was covered. That's why we have a tradition that one of the reasons we have a tradition to put something underneath the challah and something on the top of the challah. Usually have a challah board and a cover over the challah cover. So that's like the man that was covered on the bottom and covered on the top. The layer of dew went up. Behold, on the surface of the desert was a fine, bare substance, as fine as frost on the ground. That's when the sun would shine, the dew upon the man would rise towards the sun, evaporate, as a natural for dew to rise towards the sun. This is similar to even when you fill an egg shell with dew, close up its opening, and place it in the sun, the eggshell will rise by itself in the air. It's interesting. Our rabbis, however, explain that dew would rise from the earth into the air, and when the layer of dew rose, the man was revealed. And when they saw it, and behold, on the surface of the desert, dak, lashon dak, something thin, chuspas, which means to be bare. It's not, but there's no similar to it in the world, the word in the Bible, chuspas. Maybe said chuspas is an expression related to chefisa, a leather bag, and they cased dil sukma, found in the language of the Mishnah. When the man was covered by the layer of dew, they saw that there was something thin encased in its midst, as a leather bag encases something between the two layers of dew. That means mechuspas. Onkelos, however, renders mekalif, peeled. Expression derived from mechashev, bearing mechashev, the white. Kakfar, like a frost. The Hebrew kakfar means meaning frost. Onkelos rendered harfas, which is as fine as gir, as in a phrase like stone of gir. This type of black dye, as we say in the Talmud regarding covering of blood of a slaughtered fowl beast, substance that we use is gir, which is thin as gir, like a frost of the earth. One thing explains, if the man was a fine as gir and lay congealed like the frost of the earth, this is the meaning. It was like a fine as hoarfrost, spread out thin and joined together like Gidam. So it was extreme, like a very flat surface. It was a sea that was extremely small and flat. The Jewish people saw this man, and they said, "Manhu, it is man." They didn't know what it was. This is the bread which God is giving to eat. Ashes manu, it's a preparation of food. Like a king, like Vayamen Lehem HaMelech. The king allotted Vayamen to them. So it's like giving of food. That they should call by name. This is what God commanded us. Gather each one according to the eating capacity. Listen, for each person. The people you have in your family, you have 10 people, you have to count, you have to gather 10 Omer. Each one should take it to his tent. Rashi says this is the name of a measurement, it's a Torah measurement, an Omer. Later on, the Torah talks about the Omer, which was brought in Passover. Also, it's called an Omer. Misman Nafshechem, according to the number of the people that you have in your tent. They take one Omer towards each person. Ayasu came B'nai Yisrael. The Jewish people did what God commanded, and they did what the Eibishter wanted from them. I bought this chart. Wonder if I have here the word, the concept of an Omer. No, they don't. When they came in Israel, the Jewish people did that, and they each one gathered, one who gathered much and one who gathered little. Rashi says some gathered too much, man, and some gathered too little. But when they came home, they measured with an Omer. Each one had gathered, and they found that whatever they gathered, whether they gathered too much or they gathered too little, they found an Omer. That's all they found in their basket, is an Omer. That's all they found. Each person, this was a great miracle that happened to them, that they found each one an Omer. And they did it. They counted it in an Omer, and by V'layadif HaMarbe, and the one who took more didn't have more, and the one who took less, and the one who took little didn't have less. Each person counted, got exactly what they got, what they were supposed to get. So God told them, Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, you cannot leave this over, you can't leave over anything until the morning. And there were those who didn't listen to Moshe. And there were certain people that left it over. They might not bake it. They left it over from their food. They left over till the next day. And it bred worms. And it became putrid. And so Moshe got angry with them that they would leave it over, go against God's wishes to not keep it over overnight. Now she says, "But you sit on Noshim. Noshim is plural men, 2 men. Which was these 2 men? Again, Dasan of Avidam was these 2 men. Ayadim Tloy Loshinima became totally putrid, became like wormy. Ayivash, this verse is transported because first it became putrid, and later it bred worms. As it says, it not become putrid and not worm was in it. And such is the nature of things that become wormy. First it becomes putrid, I'm disgusted, and then it gets, first it rots, and then it becomes wormy. And then the Jewish people gathered every morning. Each person according to his capacity. And when the sun grew hot, the nimas and whatever was left over, nimas would melt. She says, and when the sun grew hot, it melted. What remained of the man in the fields melted and became streams from which deer and gazelle drank. And the nations of the world would hunt some of them, these animals, and taste them the flavor of the man, and how great Israel praises was. This is a mechilta, it's a medish. So ultimately, the rest of the world had a little taste of this man from the animal, from the streams of water that this man gave, the leftover man gave out, and animals drank from this man. And nimas, she says, "Venimas" meaning it melted or out. The similar word pasha in the Gemara. Was on the 6th day today, on the Friday. Loktu lechem mishnah. So today they took a double portion. Lechem mishnah. They took 2 oimers. And the entire community came by Yigidul and Moshe told them this miracle. That they went, they collected 1 omer, and they had 2 omers. Why are they getting Friday a double portion? Now she continues, Lok to Lechem Mishnah. When they measured the tents that they had gathered, they discovered it was double. 2 omers. And Haggadah explains Lechem Mishnah, unusual bread. That day was favorably different in its aroma and its flavor. Because if the Torah means only in the formers that there were 2 measures, it's not written 2 omers for each one. It says Lechem Mishnah. Why does the verse say? It should have said Shtei Omrim. Rather, it means a different, the flavor and the aroma. That's why the Gemara says the taste of the food on Shabbos is a different taste. It's not more food. It's a different quality of food. They asked him, why is it so different of this day? From here we have can deduce that Moshe had not yet told from the section regarding the Shabbos that he commanded to tell them, and that he didn't know about that. That the Jewish people would not collect the man on Shabbos. So come the 6th day, the Yishlav appeared in the verse number 5 until they asked him this question. At that point, he said, "That is what the Lord has spoken." As we should say in verse 23, which I was commanded to tell you. Therefore, because Moshe had waited to convey this command, the Torah punished him. That he said to him, "How long will you refuse to observe my commandments?" And in saying this, he did not exclude Moshe Rabbeinu from this sin. Because God told him already this command. For some reason, he held it back until the Jewish people asked the question. And then he said to him, Hashem, this is what God has spoken. Shabbos, and it's a Shabbos of Shabbos. Kodesh Hashem, it's holy to God. Tomorrow is going to be Shabbos. Bake what you wish to bake. Cook what you need to cook today. And whatever you have left over for eating tonight, Friday night, in Nichol Mishmeres on the baker, you have to leave it to tomorrow, because tomorrow can't cook. Shabbos. Rashi says, whatever you wish to bake in the oven, bake everything today for 2 days. Whatever amount that you want to cook in the water, cook today. The word ephah is baking applies to bread. And b'shelu, cooking, cook dishes. The mishmeres, ligniza, for storage. So every day you couldn't have storage of the man, for sure not. But today you're going to be able to have storage for tomorrow. And they take it that Shabbos. They left it all until the morning. It didn't become putrid and didn't become wormy. Look at that. They had the Mishnah, had extra food. Eat today what you made yesterday. Shabbos Hashem. Today is Shabbos. Like Simtz Vasada, you're not going to find any man in the fields. Last it was the morning, and they were accustomed to go out and gather. They came now, should we go out or not? Moshe Rabbeinu said, what? Where are you going out? Whatever your possession need. In the evening, they came to him again and asked him whatever they should go out. He said to them, today is Shabbos. He saw that they were concerned that perhaps the man has ceased for Shabbos. They were nervous. Maybe there's not going to be man anymore. Maybe the man has stopped. So he said to them, today you cannot find it. What is the meaning today? This implies that today you will not find it. But tomorrow, on Sunday, the man will come again. 6 days he'll gather the man. Shabbos. And the day, the 7th day is Shabbos. There will be none, there won't be any man. Now she says that Shabbos, on this day there will be no man. This verse comes only to include Yom Tov, Yom Kippur. This verse includes only to include Yom Kippur and the festivals that no man will fall on these days or well. So not only on Shabbos, but on Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, on the 2 days of Sukkot, 2 days of Pesach, etc. Was in a 7-day Yatzman al-Litlay. So it came to the next 7 day Shabbos. Yatzman, and some people went out to collect. Leimatzu, and they did not find any. God said to Moshe, how long will you refuse to observe my commandments and my teachings? She says, come a verb along with the thorn, the cabbage is torn. Though the wicked, the good suffer grace. So why is there always thorny people in the Jewish nation? Don't you see the Eibush gave us Shabbos? God gave us the Shabbos. Therefore, He's given you on the Friday and on the 6th day. Lechem Yamayim, double bread. Shuvu ish tachtav. Each person is to stay in his place. Ayetz itzim kaimai. Each person should not leave his place by Yom Hashvi on the 7th day. Rashi says, see with your own eyes that the Lord in His glory warns you about the Shabbos. But this miracle was performed every Shabbos Eve to give you twice better a miracle, double miracle. Man itself is a miracle. On Friday, every Friday there was a double miracle. Shuvu ish tachta. From here, the sages support this law of the 4 cubits for one who leaves the Shabbos limit later on. 2,000 cubits later, the Torah tells us a person is not allowed to leave Tchum Shabbos. A person is not allowed to leave the city limits 2,000 cubits from the city. A person is not allowed to leave the city 2,000 cubits from the city. And walk no more than 4 cubits from one place, 3 cubits. So from here we learn that the Torah prohibits a person, he's got 2,000 cubits and another 3 cubits, because a person place is 4 cubits. And so the limit is, but this is not split again. These are 2,000 cubits. I'm sorry. From here, the sages support the law of the 4 cubits for one who leaves the Shabbos limits, meaning the 2,000 cubits from one city that one is permitted to walk, and no more than 4 cubits from one place, 3 cubits for the body, and 1 cubit to stretch his hands and feet. So a human being is 4 cubits. That's what his space is. Let no man leave. There are 2,000 cubits of the Shabbos limits. But this is not explicit for the law of Shabbos limits only. The limits are only rabbinical enactments. the words of the Gemara and the essence of this verse stated regarding those who gather the man who want to leave the 2,000 cubits. So really the man didn't fall on top of their camp. The man fell outside the camp of the Jewish people, in the field, outside the camp. That's why they had to go out of the camp to gather the food. And so the people rested on the seventh day. And the Jewish people called it man. It's like a coriander seed, that it was white, and it tasted like a wafer with honey. Is that a God loving? The herb named coriander. It's a seed. It is round, but it's not white. The man, however, was white. And it was compared to a coriander seed, except for its roundness. It was like a coriander seed, and it was white. The tzapiches, though that was fried in honey, is called isketin in the language of the Mishnah. And that's its translation of Onkelos. He calls it like a katzapiches, like a dough fried in honey. Moshe said, this is what God commanded. We'll take one omer full of it to reserve for your generations. Man yiros alechem, so that you'll see the bread. Which I fed you. Midbar in the desert. But see, when I took you out of the land of Egypt. Ashi said, "L'mishmeres l'gniza," for safekeeping. The day they sechem for your generations, the days of Jeremiah, and Jeremiah rebuked them, saying, "Why did you not engage in Torah?" It would say, shall we leave our work and engage in Torah? On what will we support ourselves? So he would bring out the jug of man, and he would say to them, you see the word of the Lord. It does not say here, but see. With this, your ancestors supported themselves in the desert. Meaning, you're complaining where you're going to get your where you're going to make a living. The Eibishter gives you a living. And the Eibishter has many agents to prepare food for those who fear him. So therefore, that's why I said before, the man is like the panasa that a Jew receives in this world. The gift from heaven. Panasa is your livelihood. And Moshe Rabbeinu said to Aaron, "Kachtin tenes, take one jug, achas, the same behind shama mali aimer, and put there an aimer of man. V'hanachais lefnei Hashem meshmeres, and put it there before the Lord as a preservation, l'day to second for your generations." Rashi said an earth jug, v'hanach lefnei Hashem lefnei Aaron, before the ark. The verse was not said until the tent of meeting was built, but it was written here in the section dealing with the man. But really, this was told later on after the building of the Mishkan. God commanded Moshe, and Aaron took this jug of man, and he put it there before the testimony, he put it before the Arein, the Mishmeres, be to preserve the Midshem. Shiach comes will well to see this jug of man. When they saw achlot man, and the Jewish people ate the man aboyim shana for 40 years. Here you see the emukta mochlotera. We're talking about 40 years. This is before the story of the Meraglim. Adboyim as the Shabbos until they came to inhabit the world as a man. They ate the man until they came to the border of Canaan. Now there's not 30 days missing. The man fell first on the 15th of the year, and the 15th of the Nisan it stopped. So we're missing the 15th of Nisan before they came into the land of Israel 40 years later. It said the man seized in the marrow next day. And this tells us the cakes that Israel took out of Egypt, they tasted like man. That's why it says they ate 40 years exactly. 40 years. Even though they left Mitzrayim. This story, when the man came down the 15th of year. He went into Israel on the 15th of Nisan. Day after Pesach, he crossed the Jordan into Israel, missing 30 days. So that's why Gemara says that the first 30 days, the matzah tasted like man. After they crossed the Jordan. But the land on the other side of the Jordan was inhabited and good. And it says, let's now cross and see the good of the land on the other side of the Jordan. At the beginning of the border, before they crossed the Jordan, which is the plains of Moab, find the two clauses contradicting each other. Rather, it means that the plains of Moab, when Moshe Rabbeinu died, the 7th day of Adar, the man stopped from coming down. Supplied himself with the man that they had gathered on that day until they sacrificed the Omer on the 16th day of Nisan. Talking about 40 years from now. And say they ate the grain of the land, the marrow of Pesach. So it lasted since for the time Moshe Rabbeinu died until they went to the cell. They ate the man. Whatever the man didn't fall anymore. So we know the man fell in merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. And when he died, the man stopped. And an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. So now Rashi gives you the calculation. An ephah equals 3 star, and a star equals 6 calves, and a calf equals 4 lugs, and a lug equals 6 eggs. So hence the ephah equals 3 times 6 times 4 times 6. For the volume of 432 eggs, meaning the space that displaces 432 eggs. You find that 1/10 of an ephah equals 43 1/5 of an egg, 33 times 2 eggs. This is the amount of challah, the minimum amount of flour required to separation of challah needs to be the volume of 43.2 eggs. And for a meal offering. So the ephah which is I'm not sure, I'm sure it's something like 3, you need to have at least 3 pounds or 4 pounds of flour to take challah off. So over here there's 42 eggs, so that means that the man was a lot of man, 432 eggs, like a lot of flour they made from each omer. That's why it lasted them the whole day. They collected, they had it for breakfast, lunch, and supper, and that completes. And anything that was left over would disappear. Okay, we go to the Chita, the Tanya of today. We're holding in middle of chapter 23 of Tanya. Alter Rebbe is talking about that the unity that a Jew accomplishes through a mitzvah, which is the will of God, and now is accomplished because the will of the Eibishter goes straight into that mitzvah. The mitzvah is totally nullified to the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the tefillin and the charity and the mezuzah and the kosher food, etc., etc. We transform the Eibishter through this mitzvah. We connect it to the true will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why we do a mitzvah. And ultimately, this mitzvah is ultimately transforms the physical. So when the Alter Rebbe says, when the hand gives charity, the hand becomes a vehicle to the mitzvah. So in essence, we become like the patriarchs who are a chariot to God. We become a chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Alter Rebbe has thus far discussed the two levels of union of the divine will, one analogous to the chariot and its rider, and the second, the unity of the body and the soul. So we mostly have the chariot concept. The chariot is not, the chariot doesn't become one with the rider. The chariot is bottled, is nullified to the rider. Doesn't come one to the rider. While the soul becomes one with the body. It's not that the soul is riding the body. The soul becomes one with the body. Both these levels of unity are achieved by performing mitzvahs. How now he goes now to describe the third and higher level of unity that is achieved through learning Torah. And that's much greater. One who meditates in the words of Torah, that's in his mind. In the power of his speech, when the person learns Torah, that's in his mouth, which is the innermost garments of the divine soul, and thus closer to the soul itself than the faculty of action, the external garments. So you have machshava, dibur, maisa, right? Thought, speech, and action. The lowest level, the furthest to the soul, is action. The closest to the soul is thought. And then speech is closer than action. Kol shkei nefesh elikis atzma, and surely the divine soul itself. Which is closed in them, meaning in the thought and speech engaged in study. This thought, when I use my machshav, my thought, to the wisdom of God, at that time, they are fused in perfect unity. Especially if you're not distracted from other things, you're focused. If I'm focused, when I learn something, I'm focused on what I'm learning. Totally involved. Then my thought has become a perfect unity with the divine will, which is the wisdom of the Torah, and not merely a vehicle, a chariot. My brain doesn't become just a chariot. If I think in the words of Torah, it's more than my brain just becoming a vehicle. I become simply involved in it. As are the mouth and brain, which the thought and the speech of Torah started to take place. So the term perfect unity indicates that the two become one and the same. Unlike, for example, the unity of the body and the soul, which retain their separate identities, even when they are joined together and form one unit. For example, an example of perfect unity can be found in a unity of the soul with its faculties, which are a part of it, and thus completely united with it. The same way, the divine soul and faculties of speech and thought are united with the divine will when one speaks or thinks, and speaks matters of Torah. So it's not just coming together. That will be the unity of the body and the soul. They come together. When a person contemplates godliness, a person learns, and a person speaks godliness, then he becomes the Devar Hashem, becomes part of him. He's taking over speech totally. It becomes mamish like, as it says, when the Abishah spoke through the mouth of Moshe Rabbeinu. Because divine will is identical with the halacha subject of which one thinks and speaks. You're saying exactly what the Torah says. You're not adding anything. You are saying exactly what the pasuk says. Because every halacha, or I say halacha, are particular expressions of the innermost divine will itself. This was the will of God. that this thing should be allowed, like kosher or permitted, like potter, or it's exempted, like zakai, or it's innocent, or the opposite. For whatever reason, the Eibishter wanted that this person should be exempted, and that person should be the opposite of exemption. It should be punished, etc. Everything that the Torah says is what God wanted, whether I comprehend it or not. That is what the Eibishter wanted. Since every halacha is expression of God's will, the unity which a study of halacha affects between the soul and the divine will surpasses even the unity of the body and the soul. Because the body and the soul become united. They come connected to one another. They use out one another. But not that they become a unity, that they become one. But here, if we, through my contemplation, through my meditation, through my speech, I'm actually saying my speech, my meditation, my godly soul, through this aspect has become one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Similarly, all the letters combinations of the Tanakh, Pentateuch, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, the Torah, written Torah, the Nevi'im, the prophets, the Ksuvim, the writings, are all an expression of God's will and wisdom. That is Torah Shebiksav. The written Torah, what God expressed, whether in writing in the 5 books of Moses, whether in the prophets, whether in the Ksuvim, the writings of the prophets. The Hillim expression. That's why the power of just saying Hillim. Sages talk about mamish, the power of just saying the words of Tillim, which about not thinking the words of Tillim, but actually saying the words of Tillim. You're simply connecting, you're verbalizing what the Eibishter said. And they're becoming uniting these two concepts in an unbelievable unity. That's why we say at the end of Tillim, I picked Tillim, some, we say, may be the will, after we finish a book of Tillim, we say, may be the will, that whatever David HaMelech, I'm not saying, I don't know what the words of Tillim mean. May be will that whatever David HaMelech, his understanding, it was the prophet who wrote the Tillim, majority of Tillim, the Psalms, that we should say, it should be as if David HaMelech said it. So my words that I'm saying to Tillim should be as David HaMelech said it. And when David HaMelech said it, self-understood, he understood much more than when I said. I have no understanding maybe of what I'm saying. But I'm becoming united with those words. Sure, you do, because you're bringing down the wisdom and the knowledge and the will and the wisdom which is connected to God. The ultimate of unity with God, self-understood. As Rambam writes, he is the knower and he's the knowledge. Thus, when one studies Torah, prophets, and the writings, he becomes united with the divine will and wisdom, which is absolutely one with God himself. The difference between the two levels of unity with God achieved through Torah and mitzvahs, respectively, may be clarified as the following analogy. A king orders a servant to build a palace for him and to draw up all the detailed blueprints for it. When they carry out his wishes, they are united with his desire as expressed in the palace. However, the palace walls themselves do not represent the king's will and wisdom. what the blueprints do. And the architects who study it are actually involved in the study of the king's will and wisdom. That's the difference between the builder and the architect. So too in our case, actual performance of a mitzvah, although dictated by God's will, does not actually constitute this will, notwithstanding the wisdom of Torah, which itself is God's wisdom. And the halacha ruling are actually expression of his will. And thus, when one speaks or thinks the words of Torah, it attains the greatest possible level of union with God, who is one with his will and wisdom. And that's why it says, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The learning of Torah surpasses everything else, every mitzvah that you can do. Because when you learn Torah, and you, especially when you say the words of Torah and you understand it with your mind, you actually have a unity, which that's what we're trying to accomplish. The whole concept of Torah and mitzvahs is to create a unity, a relationship with God. So you're creating a relationship with God, a unity with God, not a relation aspect that become one. And that's the concept where we become one. We have this aspect also with the aspect of a relationship between each other, between a husband and wife, that the Torah calls that the knowledge, true relationship between husband and wife is in das. So even though they can do things for each other, and they can have ultimately a physical relationship, but really the true relationship is in das, in the concept of knowledge and wisdom. Because there's true unity. In wisdom, there's true unity. And that's the meaning of the statement. We started off this chapter. That Torah and God is one. It's not like mitzvahs. They're not merely organs of the king, as are mitzvahs, but Torah is one with God. Mitzvahs are the organs of the king, but Torah is one. So, as for explained above, the unity of mitzvahs of God is like the body and soul. The body unites with the soul, but it doesn't become one with the soul. The soul is ultimately is separate from the body. That's why ultimately the soul leaves the body. Where two separate entities are joined. Where Torah is entirely the God. That's why mitzvahs, you become a merkava. You become a chariot. Your body becomes a chariot to God. It's bottled to God, but it doesn't become one. While Torah makes you actually one with God. Now, since the divine will, which is in perfect unity with God himself, stands completely revealed in the divine soul and its inner garments, meaning through thought and speech, while a person occupies himself to Torah study, and there's nothing obscure from the divine will at that time. When I Pashut learn Chumash, there's no obscurity. I'm saying the pasuk the way it is. When I learn halacha, I'm learning the halacha the way it is. The way it is. There's nothing hidden over here. But when one studies Torah, the divine will and his wisdom contained within the full expression. Saying the verse the way God said it. I'm not giving my 2 cents to it. I'm saying the word where God said it. I open the Gemara, I learn the meaning behind the halacha, which is Torah Sheba'al Peh. Pashut, expressing the ratzon of the Eibishter, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But when one studies Torah, the divine will and his wisdom comes into full expression in one's soul and its faculties of thought and speech. So it follows that at that time, the soul and these garments of the thought and speech totally united with God at that moment. As the unity is comparable to God's speech and thought, the way it's connected in its essence, as explained above. Because there's nothing that's separate from God in behest upon him, except insofar that the continence is that's things that are hidden. Only then that a created being perceives himself as distinct entities. Since there is no such concealment when one studies the Torah, one attains thereby a perfect unity with God. A unity comparable that with God's speech and thought, which himself with himself prior to the revelation as speech and thought as they are contained within himself. Moreover, the unity, meaning the unity of the divine soul, its faculty with God that is attained through the Torah study, is even more exalted and more powerful than the unity of God, the infinite light, in the upper spiritual worlds. So not only that you might think that the Torah study in the upper worlds is greater than a Jew sitting and learning Torah in this world, it's not that way. Because that was the divine will of God, that the revelation of God and the revelation of Torah should not be in the upper worlds. The Torah is not in the heaven. God wanted that the Torah would reveal him in this world. That's what God wanted, and therefore that's the real will of God. That there not should be a revelation in the spiritual worlds. God wanted a revelation in the physical worlds. In this world, God gave the Torah to the people in this world. Since it was identical Torah being studied, that's God gave an oitz. That's why the Gemara says that the Eibishter gave an oitz. He gave a treasure that he held in heaven thousands of years before the creation of the world. But and therefore, since the Eibishter created all the upper worlds, all for the Torah that was going to be studied in this world, so all the upper worlds, all the spiritual worlds, they receive their energy. They receive the energy from us learning Torah in this world. Because we reveal the true dots and the Eibush of this world. The way the Torah is connected to this world. The Yotzeinim HaChachmas Yisbarah, which is the dots in the true will and the wisdom of God. Yosef Kulam HaChachmas is. And it says everything is made with wisdom. So God's wisdom is thus the search and the vitality of all worlds. So it follows that God's wisdom, which is the Torah, the Ma'alim HaKulam transcends them all. It must be above all worlds since it's their source. In fact, the Torah is God's will, as described as an encompassing light that encompasses all worlds. Meaning it's at the level that cannot become enclosed within the world, but rather animates and illuminates them from a distance, from above, transcending and an encompassing matter. It is at this level, which transcends all the worlds, that is enclosed, this what transcends all the worlds, comes down into a human being that reads that pasuk, that reads that verse, or learns that concept. That is closed, truly revealed form in one soul, and and his soul garments when he studies the Torah. For God, now he hit it out to them and says, wow, I just told you what is accomplished when you learn. And meanwhile, you sat and learned and you felt nothing. Unbelievable revelations happen throughout all the worlds when we just sat over here right now and we're learning together. Unbelievable revelations happen throughout the existence of all worlds and in this world. So the Gemara answers your question. The Gemara asks this question. The Gemara answers, even though he does not see it, meaning when one studies Torah, he's unable consciously to experience the unity of his soul with God, which is attained thereby. So l'chayra, I don't feel it. My soul has this unity with God, and God comes down to the world, and my soul's connected with the essence of God. When I'm sitting and learning right now, it's happening to us right now. But nevertheless, the soul feels it. Yet his soul feels it. In fact, this is precisely why he can endure such a unity with God. Precisely because he cannot feel it, unlike the supernal worlds. So that's why in the supernal worlds where they do feel it, they have a very, very limited capacity. Because since they feel, too much would be unattainable for them. We that we don't feel have an unlimited revelation, where godness is not obscured, as in this world. They cannot therefore endure such a unity with God without becoming completely nullified or losing their entire identity. But over here, the Eibishter gave a great revelation that could be brought down to the world, and humans would not lose their identity. And this concept that you have a greater revelation in this world, and at the same moment, humans can handle that revelation, meaning they do not be nullified from their existence, a whole concept in itself. Because it sounds like contradicting. In the heavens, where there's a revelation of the soul without body, over there, God has to hide himself. Over here, God reveals himself. Over there, they feel the revelation, and therefore God has to hide himself. Over here, where we don't feel the revelation, there can be a revelation that's unlimited. The Eibishter created the body, the guf, which is the vessel, such a strong entity, such a powerful entity. That's why you really have to respect the body. And this body is such a powerful entity that it can handle a soul that has revelations, and it still will not lose its reality. It will not lose its own reality. That's the power of our Nefesh HaBahamis, we should realize. That's the power of our physical side of us that gives the capability for unlimited revelations, and we continue to exist. If we would feel that revelation, we would disappear. We would nullify ourselves. We would lose ourselves. And that's why the expression, this famous story that the Gemara says that 4 people went into the holy Pardes and only one went out. Means there were those who wanted to have, they said, even though in their body, they want to have a revelation. They want not that it should be revealed in a encompassing way. They wanted that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Well, I want to have a face-to-face revelation. God says it's impossible for humanity to have it. Not as a negative thing, but as a positive thing. That we want to live. You don't want to have a revelation and die. We want a revelation and continue to exist. Well, to have that, the body needs to have certain qualities that it can handle that concept. And that's why the body, in a certain aspect, the vessel, the body has something in it that can contain this soul. And that's why the body and soul work extremely well together. The body is not going to nullify itself by the revelation, whatever the soul is going to feel. And therefore, you have nothing to worry about but giving the soul whatever it needs. Because the body will survive that concept. The Eibishter gave a certain quality to the body, which he didn't give to the soul itself. So the soul itself, as we learned many times, the soul itself wants to become one with its source. What happens if it becomes one with its source? It loses its identity. The soul gives the body gives the soul. The body could give the soul its total connection and keep it in the body. And that's the greatness of the body. And we should realize that greatness of the body. So that's what the Gemara says, even though he doesn't see it, the body doesn't see it, but the soul, it gives the right to soul to see it. It gives the right for the soul to see it. And that's what we need to do. We need to give the right for the soul to see its source. And how do we give the right for the soul to see its source? By learning Torah. There's no greater unity for my soul to connect to its source than by giving it the Torah, and by giving it its source. And that's the Torah, the Chachma. Giving it the wisdom of the Torah, and the soul will receive a great revelation more than we see in the Gan Eden. More than the soul. You might think, oh, but my soul, let my soul go to Gan Eden and receive it. No, it'll receive more than it receives in Gan Eden. He receives in this small a greater connection of wisdom that he learns with the body in this world than he will receive in Gan Eden. And that's why we should learn more Torah in this world. We should give. Not only will it help the body, also rectify the body, because the Torah came to make the body a better body, but it'll give the soul, it'll give my soul even a greater revelation. And even though I don't see it, but my soul does. And as Alter Rebbe will say later, that we have to have Rachmanis in the soul. So even that's where you have to have Rachmanis in the soul. If you understand my soul's needs, then even though I don't feel this revelation, I should have Rachmanis on my soul. And I should feed my soul. That's why the Torah, for one reason, is called Lechem, bread. Just like the body needs bread, the soul needs bread. And it's bread. It's sustenance. It's energy. It's from Torah. That's its energy. He doesn't receive energy from physical bread. He receives energy from Torah. And therefore, just like we have Rachmanis in the body, we feed the body, we should feed the soul. And there's two ways of feeding the soul, through Torah mitzvahs. But the Torah, the mitzvahs is more a connection to the soul with the body. Because the mitzvahs are done through the body. But the great ultimate connection of the soul to its source is through learning Torah. Over there, there's no physical contractions over here. There's no physical connections. It's totally learning Torah, opening up a Chumash and reading the Torah the way it's written. Opening up a Gemara and learning the Gemara the way it's written. And trying to comprehend the Talmud in my mind, the way the Talmud the way the law expresses itself. And now, if I'm focused and I learn with intensity, now my mind, my mouth, which is two spiritual concepts, become totally united with God, and that's the greatest food for my neshama. That is the greatest feeling, and that's why we see that we get a lot of enjoyment from learning. We get a lot of enjoyment from learning Torah. We see that people love to learn. People love to learn. Why? Because they're neshama. They don't realize what kind of joy and delight my neshama, my soul receives from learning. There's no better unity for this neshama. That's why ultimately my body feels feels the delight in learning. Feels like some kind of a gashmak, some kind of a beauty in an aspect of hearing learning, or all learning. because it's really the expression of my neshama. Neshama is on a high. He's having a tiny, he's having a delight that's unbelievable. And because he's having a delight that's unbelievable, we might not realize, we not see that in a physical way, but we do feel it. That for some reason we enjoy limud haTorah. We enjoy learning some aspects of Torah. We enjoy connecting some concept of godliness in our life, in our brains, and even in our speech. We love talking, divrei Torah, etc. And that's the point. And hopefully, when Mashiach comes, that's it. We're not waiting for Gan Eden, because again, the Gan Eden, I'm receiving less in Gan Eden than I'm receiving in this world. That's why we wait for Mashiach to come. Because when Mashiach comes, we'll have the revelation in our body. And that's the greatness of Mashiach. That when Mashiach comes, we'll be able to not only, the body will not obscure anymore. The body will reveal the soul in the body. So until Mashiach comes, I got to go to Gan Eden. I got to go to paradise to have this, my soul has its own, revelation, and without the body, not connected to the body. But according to this, it's a less revelation. So why am I going to Gan Eden for? There's no gain. I'm losing out of it. So therefore, the best thing is we should pray for the coming of Mashiach, and then we'll have the greatest revelation. Because we'll have the revelation. We'll see. Not only will be able, will the soul have its connection, unlimited connection to God, but the body will not obscure it. The body will reveal it. And it will reveal in the world. That's why the whole world will change. Because once there's revelation in me and within me, that my body doesn't obscure it, then the whole world will feel it and will transform the whole world. So that ends the Tanya of the day. Today is the 12th day of the month, which is chapter 66 to 68. 3 chapters. If you do those 3 chapters of Tehillim, you would do the Chitas of the day. And I hope that you continue learning Chitas tomorrow on Shabbos. And we will come together, Be'ezrat Hashem, on Sunday morning, 8 o'clock, and we'll continue the Chitas of the day.